pronouns and how they dress are important, and they're identical. I don't see
Even in this bout of recovery, you get to
Real
really
people, real
hear
stories,
your
real
story.
recovery. I am Kat, and I'm on the road of recovery.
So my name is Luis Villagrana. I currently live in Lebanon, Ohio, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. I've been sober since September 9th, 2015. And because of that, today, not only am I a husband, a father, a better son, brother, and friend, and hopefully that says enough about that.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for joining us. If you could start off by sharing a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, so I grew up in California. I was born in Monterey, California, but that's not where I was raised. So I was raised in Tulare County, so in Visalia, Tulare, in that collective area. And, it's filled with agriculture, fields, dairies, farm work. There's 199,000 people in my hometown, about the size of Lebanon as well. So a little bit bigger, but more congested. Unfortunately, it was riddled with, at that time, and still to this day, with a variety of substances. You had black tar, heroin, cocaine, crank, which is methamphetamine, and everybody drank and smoked, smoked marijuana. So, growing up in that sense, it wasn't out of the normal to see your uncles, your aunts, your parents, and everybody just enjoying a couple beers throughout the day, not realizing that it was more consistent than normal, right? So, marijuana smoke wasn't an issue. It was, normal, everyday living. But in the vicinity of where we lived, there was some questionable moments, right? So we had individuals that, they utilized heroin, crack cocaine, stuff like that. So, but it was a different time frame. So kids still played outside, we'd be gone all day long doing what we did. But, we lived in almost a poverty status, right? So because of that, we hung out with a lot of family friends, and it just kind of collectively looked like everybody lived that way. Lo and behold, as you go down the line over the years, you start realizing not everybody lives that way. I started to identify people that had money based on what they had, or what they wore, or how they brought lunch to school. I was 6 years old when I first started smoking marijuana, and I was doing that with my sister, who's 2 years younger, her half brother. He had come in to live with us, and he introduced me to that. And from that point forward, it was I was always trying to find where I fit in. I was trying to find acceptance, not only within myself but those around me. His father, which was my sister's father, and at that time my stepdad, he was very abusive because I wasn't his child. There was a lot of abuse, a lot of torture, and I don't just mean like a backhand here and there. There was actual torture, that took place. There was a lot of threats. Unfortunately, my mother wasn't aware of these because she worked at nighttime, and then she was at home during the day. We were at school, and then we'd come home and have to deal with him. And it wasn't until my sister's half brother shot me that I ended up in the hospital. There was some bruises. I was asked questions by the doctor, the police, and my mother. And after that, my mother said enough was enough. And then the next relationship that my mother had, she introduced us to my other sister's father, which he was stern, but he was, in all, he was a good dude. I used to work in the fields with him, picking grapes when I was little, and you get a certain respect for individuals that work in that type of field, in the fields, in the agriculture, on the dairy. So I used to go. He worked in the dairy, so I would go work with him. And he worked in the fields, I'd work in the fields. But that relationship had its own issues. And then the person I call my dad. So I have three settings. I have my father, my dad, and my pops. And those three individuals have all been influential to my life in some form. So my dad, which is my youngest brother and sister's biological father, unfortunately he passed away due to his alcoholism. At least the effects of it, due to cirrhosis of the liver. But that man instilled in me everything I needed to know as a young man becoming a young man. And he loved us unconditionally, treated us with respect, and that was the better part of my childhood, right? So, I got older brothers and sisters, and what I did not know was that everybody doesn't drink from noon until 10 p.m. every day. And I remember coming home and, I needed to cut my hair, and my dad would say, give me a few minutes and I'll cut my hair. I need to make sure my hands stop shaking, because maybe he wasn't feeling good that day and he woke up a little later or, whatever. But then, he'd crack open a couple beers and then you would see his hand steady out. We'd go, all right, go get the clippers, and I thought everybody did that. I see that first can open up and he pounded back, and the second one pounded back, and then the third one, he would change every hour. He would have a beer, and it was just to maintain. But I thought everybody drank that way, and I'm watching this, but I think that's normalcy. But by this time, I too am drinking. I started drinking at a young age. Every Hispanics family offers a beverage of some sort, a little sip here and there, and uncles, hey, at a party or whatever, here, have a little sip of a beer, or whatever's in their glass, and that's what I started taking advantage of. And eventually, you start sneaking beers, and you start going to stores and snatching up little things off the shelf. And by the time I'm a teenager, man, not only am I drinking, smoking weed, I've done little bumps of coke, and it just proceeded.
And what did it do for you at that time?
Really, a lot of people talk about escape and numb, and it did none of that. It allowed me to just kind of enjoy the moment. That curiosity is always what it has sparked my interest in trying something. Is that curiosity of what's that going to do? Smoking a joint, you get the giggles, and then you got the munchies, and I'm talking like this is like, just dirt weed with seeds in it and everything, and it smells like manure almost because it's coming from, around the way. But as I start doing other things, I like that buzz. As we say in the rooms, man, I like oblivion. It feels different. Again, go back. I'm always searching for acceptance. Within myself or around from others. And hanging around the older cousins, brothers in the area, uncles, stuff like that. You start to be able to pick up what they're doing. You start talking the way they're talking. You start understanding from their perspective. And so then I started doing that. I started following those footsteps. And long story short, now we're gang banging. We're selling cocaine and marijuana and just doing everything we can. I'm drinking Night Train, Thunderbird, St. Ides, Budweiser, King Cobras, and anything else we can get our hands on. We're smoking daily, we're drinking daily, and we're having fun, and we're thinking we're on top of the world. Unfortunately, little did we know, that all that catches up to us. Now I got members of our neighborhood going in, doing time, or, unfortunately, they passed away, not just due to the substances, but the lifestyle itself.
How were your family relationships?
Questionable.
Okay.
Up to that point, like, I could stop by, but I wasn't really welcome to stay. You get what I'm saying? Like, there had to be set hours. Like, I could go when my pops was at work because he wasn't bitching and complaining, to my mom, why is he here? Because again, he wants what's best for us. And mother's love is unconditional, but it's also sometimes a little enabling, as they say. And
When it seems like you're really torn between two different. You have extended family who is, I don't want to say fun, but what you're attracted, the alcohol, the drugs, and everything are there, and then your mom and pops that they see that's not a long-term life. They want so it seems like you're kind of being pulled back and forth. You make these decisions and then start using, drinking again, and get pulled in. Is that fair to say that?
Oh yeah.
Kind of back and forth.
Yeah. So I've always tried to keep one foot in and one foot out. One foot in the house, one foot out in the streets. You know what I'm saying? I've always tried to figure out how can I make this work. It's hard to not let the streets come back into your home, right? So I'm selling drugs. I'm running around with guns, all day, every day. And it's not out of paranoia. It's just the lifestyle that I'm used to, and I thrive in chaos like many of us do. My pops, it's not that he didn't love me. It was the fact that he didn't want to allow that in his home.
Yeah.
Because my little brother, my little sister there, it would only help influence them, and there was a lot there. So, he wanted the best for all of us, and I see that today. I didn't see that back then, right? So, and eventually I'm like, I'm out of here. So what do? I go back home to California. Only, get this, to start selling dope again. All right?
Shocking.
Yeah. So, I'm out there and I'm making all the right connections, doing all this thing, and a cousin said, hey man, why don't you come stay with me back here in Vegas? Me and the old lady and the kid. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And he was very, straightforward. He's like, listen man, no drugs, right? And I was like, nah, man, just, I just smoke weed and drink now. Just smoke weed and drink, right? Mind you, I was probably loaded when I said that. So I go back to Vegas and, we move in and I move in and, I go find 2 jobs, because, okay, I'm going to get this rolling, right? I've never been into the rooms of any support group from the community at this point. I have no idea. I know they exist, but I don't know what they're about. And I want to go back. In '99, when we moved to Las Vegas, my pops was a member of a support group, right? A 12-step support group. And I remember him driving to that support group. Me and him both went, and he went in and I stayed outside, and there was a PT club across the street, and I walked over there and I got my little fake Nico card, and I'm like, can I get a Corona, please? And I come back and, I'm sitting there, and I remember walking over and throwing it in the trash can in front of this building, or it's in front of this this door, and it just so happened to be a community support group going on there. And I was like, what are these guys doing,
Mm-hmm.
So, fast forward now, it's 2004, and, I got my job, and then I meet who is my wife today,
Okay.
and you would think, as we're in an uphill climb, I like to say, fellas. I'm only drinking, I'm only smoking a little bud, but I'm not really doing anything else. And then, I meet her, I meet my wife, and she's the first person I was ever, transparent with. She just gave a different vibe, like, what I'm saying? And, I start to talk to her, and I tell her, I used to struggle with this and that and everything, and, I got some other stuff going on in my life, and so I divulged that, was always upfront about that, and, she accepted me for the shit show that I was, and we proceeded to build from there. Now, I made a lot of errors between 2004 and 2006, but I like to look at every opportunity is to grow as an individual, right? So in 2006, my wife asked me to move back to California. I said, let's go. So I moved back to California. She's at UC Berkeley. We get our first place. The place was, maybe 2 times this size, and it was an arm and a leg to pay for rent, but we were doing it, and I worked, and I did side jobs and everything, and, I still drank, but I stopped smoking weed, but, and in 2007, we had our first daughter, and if I have to be honest, because I work a program of rigorous honesty, I started dabbling here and there, not, I'll smoke a little here, I'll sniff a little there, and then we had my daughter. We moved right before we had her. We moved into a new spot, and the next door neighbor's brother just happened to love methamphetamines. And I was like, I love to drink, and I love meth. Let's do it, baby. And now I'm doing it here and there, and next thing you know, he gets busted, he gets deported. I'm working in California gaming, in a casino in Oakland, and one of the guys there happened to like to put a little rock inside his cigarette to smoke every now and then. So I'd get off work and I'd have that, and then I'd go home, and I'm like, well, the party's kind of started, but it ain't really kicked off yet, So here I go again. I start to dabble a whole lot more, and I start to realize that, hey, this is starting to slip out of my hands, this rope here, right? And my wife had this idea: how about we move back to Vegas so we can be closer to the family, and so my daughter can, grow up around them? And I said, absolutely, sure. And then, in my mind, I said that, but verbally, I later on, what I said to her, it was only to take the blame off of myself. But we get back there, and within a couple months, I'm full blown back into my addiction in every fashion. Drinking all day, all night. I'm employed. I work as a hospital biller. Go figure. But I'm full throttle into my addictive lifestyle. We had a second child, and in '09, and that did not stop me, and it deteriorated the relationship between my wife and I. It compromised the relationship that I needed to build with my daughters as a father, as a dad. At that moment, I was just a father. I was starting to just become that, and unfortunately, from '09 till 2015, I had never been sober again. So my daughters had no idea what a sober father looked like. I will tell you that I am proud of my wife for being, despite the fear and the unknown, she was courageous and she had strength, and she decided enough was enough. And September 4th, she left without my knowledge. She had an 8-hour head start, and I was like, oh shit, So when the bus came at 2:35, and my girls weren't on it, and the little girl there was only 3 kids on there, my 2 daughters and some other little girl that lives on top of the hill, and she's like, no, they weren't at school today, and I was like, what? And it just hit me. I tried calling my wife, and nothing. I tried calling the school. They said no, they were unenrolled. And I called my sister, and I was like, she's not answering. I think she left. And my sister called her, and yep, she was gone. She had an 8-hour head start, and I had no idea which direction she was going. And I'm glad I didn't, honestly, So from that point forward, my higher power was like, I got you, bro. I'm going to take care of this wheel. You just don't know it yet, right? So the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th got really shaky. I'll be the first one to admit that, I was at my weakest point. And that's the day I truly broke, So the 7th at nighttime, September 7th, I'm cleaning my firearm. I got a revolver. And so I took all the rounds out, cleaning it, and I get a phone call. And of course it's, hey, why don't you come pick up this stuff? I'm like, hell yeah. So I slammed my revolver back into the sleeve, threw it in my pocket, and I took off, right? The next day, which is the 8th, that was the day. I had said something in the lines of, when am I going to get to see my daughters again? I want to see you and the girls. And she replied, I don't know. And all I heard was never, right? And so I pulled out my revolver, stopped. I was on the freeway, stopped, pulled out my revolver, put it in my mouth, pulled the trigger, and click. Because I forgot to reload it the night before. And in that moment, I broke, and that was my low moment, you hear a lot of people talk about a rock bottom. My rock bottom is, lower than that. It's, it's a casket, it's ashes, it's, a memorial. But that low, I had never taken myself, and I was talking to my compadre, which is my youngest daughter's godfather, and he'll tell you to this day, he has never heard me broken like that in my life. He's like, you've always been the strongest one out of all of us. He's like, I never thought I'd ever hear you like that. I recognize that. And the next day, September 9th, was the first day that I did not use or drink.
Wow.
From that point, I was 23 days sober when I ended up in the hospital. So I actually decided to leave the house. A lot of memories. everything in there. I just needed a break. I needed to get away. So I decided to go stay at the hotel. And I'm on the phone with my wife. And from that point, I really don't remember until I wake up in the hospital and the doctors are telling me that my heart had stopped. My wife actually was on the phone with me. She called 911, and since our numbers were still linked to California, the cops knew exactly where I was because of her description, and they were there in a matter of minutes kicking down the door. So when I talked to our first responders, I tell them how there was actually a unit across the street. You guys call them parties, but we call them Carlos Juniors, right? I don't know what's wrong with everybody over here. But there was a unit right there, and they jumped the center medians and went straight to the hotel. And that's a hotel that is known for drugs, prostitution, overdoses, but it was also had the cheapest rates for that night, you know. And they took me to the hospital. And a couple of days later, I asked a nurse to if they had a psychiatrist or a drug counselor or somebody I could talk to, and a little lady by the name of Mary Ann came in with a little piece of paper and helped, guide me on that direction of sobriety, and I went to treatment for the first time in my life. So I arrived October 3rd, I believe it was, in Sun Street in Salinas, California, and that started the journey that I'm still on today. And the first thing I had looked up before I got here was where were the meetings in my town of Lebanon, and it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so Wednesday night I walked into the rooms and I said, hello, my name is Luis. You know what I'm saying? And from that day forward, I kept doing it. I got a sponsor, I worked the steps, and 4 months later, my wife said, let's work our marriage out one last time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as a person working in the addiction field space and whatnot, what do you do, to be able to take care of your mental health, your emotional health, with recognizing that your work isn't recovery, or your work isn't your recovery?
Yeah.
So what do you do to be able to keep that?
I overeat, guys. No, wait. You can take that out of there. No, so honestly, the lovely thing that I have today is I still go to my, I have a home group, I have a sponsor, I got great brothers and sisters in recovery as well, and I have a ton of support for people that aren't in recovery, and that's okay. I have a diverse, collaborative, and I love it, and I voice myself when I'm stressed, when I'm strained, when I'm, frustrated, when I'm happy. And I realize, and I get reminded all the time, and I'm grateful that I get that reminder of it's never as bad as it used to be. You know what I'm saying? And I have to remind myself on occasions that, I'm serving out my higher powers will. And He's laying down that foundation for me, and all I got to do is the footwork. I don't have to worry about the destination; just enjoy the ride. And so, and that's the same thing I tell anybody else, man. When I am strained and stressed, I get to relay that information to like-minded individuals that understand exactly what that looks like, and I'm provided feedback. That suggestion is, yes, it is suggestive only, but it's up to me whether I want to do what they're saying or not. And most occasions, it's exactly what I needed to hear.
So my last question is, when you're having a bit of a day, some struggles and whatnot, are there some words of hope that you tend to go to lean on for yourself that you can share?
Take a minute to catch your breath, take a minute to recenter, and know that you're doing all right.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your story. You have an incredible story of chaos, transition, just moving. Back and forth to California to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I know it's close, but it's not like it's just moving down the street. But that total chaos to really a life of serenity and peace and joy. It's incredible.